Hello guys, as a lot of you know, I got a Fendt 930 model and a John Deere 6920S model, both Siku Control models, second hand off eBay a good while ago. And when I came to test the Fendt model, I found that the rear link servo didn't seem to work. So last night I had a little look at what might have been the problem. I thought maybe it was just something in the gears here, but it turns out that the problem is the motor. So what we're going to do today is try and solve that problem. So like I said, I first blamed the problem as being some dirt or something in the gearing of the servo here. But it could easily have been that somebody had pulled the servo arm and moved gears around, or that there was broken gears in the servo, anything like that. But when I got the servo out, I had been testing the servo, because I'd been loosening different things and trying to move the servo with the controller, but it wasn't working. And when I did get down this far and take the back off the servo, I could feel that this motor was very, very warm. It was very hot actually. So that would suggest to me that this motor is probably burnt out. Today what I plan to do is first of all see if this motor actually works. So that just means desoldering the two wires for the motor and taking it out. And if it doesn't work, as I suspect it does, I'm pretty sure that the motor has burnt out. But if it doesn't work, what I'll try and do is find a motor in some of the broken servos that I have, because I have a lot of servos where I've broken the gears from overloading the servos, but the motors would be relatively new. So I'll see if I can get a motor this size. There's a good chance I will find one, because I seriously doubt there's anything special about this servo. I'd imagine it's just the same cheap servo motors that's in all the eBay servos and things like that, because it doesn't really make sense for Siku to spend any huge money just to make a little servo. So just to show you what's happening here, I've hooked up the controller now and added the battery, and you can see steering servo working fine. And if I try to spin this servo here, see, we have one direction seems to work alright. Actually, it's starting to work, but it does not sound healthy at all. Yesterday it wasn't working at all, so this is a little bit of progress. But you see, we should be able to change the direction of the motor, but it's just not going. It's like the motor is getting stuck. So if we're going to replace this motor, we're going to need to find one that's roughly the same size to fit inside the housing here of the servo. But we can always modify the housing if we can find a motor that even just fits to the gearing. So the best place to look is in old servos, and I have piles of old servos that I've broken, and it's just a matter of finding one that's going to match. Here's a possible candidate. I don't know what type of servo this is out of, but that motor is roughly the same size. That could be an option, but the wire is missing from there, so that's not the best option. Here's another. Here's one of these really cheap eBay servos. That actually might be the same motor from there. It looks like it, so maybe that motor in there would be better. It has the two wires on it, so that's another option. Well, it looks like this motor is the best option we have. It's around about the right size. Hopefully the output shafts are similar enough. The one on the Siku model looks a little bit bigger, so the gear might not fit onto this this motor here, but we can give it a go. See, if this motor doesn't work, I'm not sure what we'll use, but we'll give it a go. First thing I need to do is remove this broken motor, and to do that I just have to take it or desolder it from the board back here. So you can see the red or the black and the red wire sticking through the front there. I desoldered the motor from the servo here. It always surprises me how bad the soldering is on the Siku servos. I mean, you have to pay like €30 for these things on eBay, and this like $2 servo, the soldering is a million times better. Like, it's amazing, you pay like 10 times the price, but you get less than a tenth of the quality. So unbelievable. Like, the solder joints on the wires going to the servo, they're absolutely terrible. They're not even completely soldered in the pinholes. But anyway, here's the motor. So if I connect it up to the battery, if it's a good motor, it should just spin. Nope. No, not a movement from that motor. So clearly this motor is dead. Okay, so that's no good. Here is the good motor that we might replace it with. And just to show you, you probably can't see that, but maybe you can hear the buzz of the motor. So that's obviously working fine. So next thing to do is see if we can get this little gear off and put it on the new motor. So let's see if the gear will fit onto this motor here. Yeah, it seems to fit on, so it might be a little bit looser than the other one, I'm not sure, but we can give it a go in the motor or in the servo housing and see if it's going to work. Motor seems to fit in there alright. I can see that the gear is meshing to the gear on the inside. Maybe I have to push it down a little bit further. That looks pretty perfect to me now. You probably can't see that, but the gear on the new motor is meshing in no problem. Now the next thing is whether we can solder all this in place. I'm probably going to have to extend the wires because they have to go out through the top here and then around the PCB to reattach to the PCB in the tractor. So I'll just have to put the rest of the servo back together and see if this is going to work. Well, I got the motor in. The first time I tried it, I discovered that the motor wires were the opposite way around that they were for the old motor. Or, well, I had the motor in the wrong way around, I suppose. It's the same thing. But I just extended the wires a little bit, made it a little bit easier to solder it that way. Now, hopefully I'll be able to close it with these longer wires in. But the end result, anyway, is that we seem to have the servo working. So I would say that is a success. Hopefully I can get the model back together now without too much difficulty, and we can test that the lifting arms actually work. Alright, so we have the model back together now. All we did was replace that motor really, and as you can see, we now have perfect control over our rear link. So that wasn't working at all when I first got the model, and so it's good to get that fixed. So let's just recap on what I did. So I took the model apart because the servo wasn't working, and I took the servo out, so there was no load on the servo arm that connected it to the rear link here. Tried to move the servo again with the controller, that didn't work. Then I took the top half off the servo, the bit with the gearbox, so the end of the motor was exposed. I again tried to move the motor of the servo using the RC controller that came with the tractor, and the motor didn't move, or it moved badly today when I started recording this video. So I was suspicious of the motor, and when I took the motor out of the casing of the servo, I could feel that it was getting very hot, so I knew the motor had been damaged, maybe through overloading or maybe just through use, or it could have just been a bad motor to start with. So I knew the motor was the problem. When I took the motor out of the servo casing, I tested it with a battery, and that told me that the motor was definitely at fault, that it wasn't the control board in the servo, so it was definitely the motor that was faulty. So that meant I could replace the motor with one from another servo. Then I went looking through my kind of spares bins of crap that I had here, scrap bits of servos, and this cheap servo is probably only like a $2 servo or something like that. I can't really remember what it was, but I know it was extremely cheap. I took the motor out of that, I changed the gear that had come on the motor. It was a motor like this. I took away this gear and put the gear from the Siku servo onto that new motor, put the new motor in the casing, wired it up. When I first wired it up, the servo tried to spin continuously because I had wired the motor the wrong way around, so I unsoldered the motor again and just switched the two wires, and then it worked perfectly. So if one of your servos in your Control 32 model isn't working, you might want to try, instead of immediately paying the €30 or whatever it is to get a servo from a Siku servo, you could get one of these $1 or $2 servos, take the motor out of that, if the motor is at fault, and replace it yourself. But there could be other problems with the servos. The control boards could fail and stuff like that, so you might end up having to get a Siku servo. But if you can avoid it, you know, you'd save €28 for half an hour's work or something. So it's pretty straightforward fix. So that's the rear lifting arms sorted. I'm very glad to get that fixed now. I've only got the lights on the front of the model to fix, so one of these LEDs is blown, I think, so I'll have to take a look at that. And then this model is pretty much the way it came out of the factory, I'd say. That will bring the model back to pretty much how it came out of the factory. But I'm planning to add extra LEDs to this model. I also promised to do a video on doing beacons for this tractor. I definitely intend to do that. I've just been spending so much time working on the RC controller that I'm not getting a huge amount of time to do other stuff. But that is something I intend to do. The next video on this tractor anyway will definitely be me sorting out these front lights. I don't know if I'll do the video about adding the beacons on this tractor, or if I'll do it using the control board from the John Deere 6920S, because I have that set up now so that I can just plug it into a breadboard and add lights and whatever else I need to do very easily. So it will be a lot easier to demonstrate how to do things using that control board than this model. But anyway, that's all I have for today. If you like that little fix to the servo, make sure and hit the like button and the share button and all that stuff. And if you have any comments or suggestions, let me know below the video. And that's pretty much everything, so thanks very much for watching.